The one last place to look to figure out what the message of a story is going to be found in the mentor. So the movie Eternals uses the creator archetype. The creator creates these superhero beings to come and protect Earth until the time that a future immortal needs to be born out of the Earth. Earth will be destroyed in the process of the immortal being born, but the immortal will create 1 million more planets like Earth with trillions of more people and generations. The created superheroes are mentored by the mentor to rebel against the creator. As the immortal is being born out of the earth, they turn the birthing immortal to stone. So this is strong abortion imagery. And, going back to our 3 components, it's a refusal to submit, a refusal to sacrifice the present generation for the next generation, and independence from their creator, and independence from the purpose they were created for. Now, it is also an inversion of archetypes. The creator archetype is the one who should be obeyed, and the created learn their purpose from the one who creates them. However, most often when we see inversion of archetypes, it's switching the hero and heroine roles. So he is the damsel in distress. And if there is a prince or a hero, he is often depicted as weak. Like the brave, noble Thor from previous Thor movies suddenly was pathetic and silly in Thor: Love and Thunder. And that worked in the inversion of the archetype. Rather than him laying his life down to save the woman, she sacrificed her life, and he is the one who is pictured in a pink apron raising the next generation in the final scene. And the little girl who he is not protecting but then takes into battle after breakfast. Now this is important. Feminism uses weak, God-ordained authority as an excuse to grasp for not God-ordained power. And that's actually what you're starting to see in Christian literature right now. Secular literature has moved down the branch to the logical ends. It doesn't want to just be free of God's laws. It wants to usurp. They want to actually rule over God. And we see this with some of the secular things coming out. Why serve the king when you could be a queen? She doesn't want to marry the CEO. She wants to be the CEO. And he can be her underling. Now, Christians know that tropes like these invert family. But I would actually say that these tropes invert the purpose of mankind. And I'm not attacking women in the workplace. I'm attacking the heart of feminism, which is the refusal to submit, refusal to sacrifice, both of which flow from the lie that independence saves you. And is why I would say there is this push for abortion, because you can't be independent when you're holding a baby. And this independence of choice means you don't depend on anyone else to tell you what to do. You follow your heart. So, what are the trends and where do these books go? Now, I haven't read any of these, but I'm active on author pages. And so the six-figure authors explain the trends that they're using that people are responding to and buying a lot of books from. So one of them is universal fantasies versus universal truth. And I was really naive because it took me years in the author threads to figure out what they were talking about. And they were all talking about the effectiveness of universal fantasies. And I thought they were talking about universal truth. But they were talking about the universal desires for sin, like vengeance on your enemies, but usually sexual sin. Because if the moral center that starts with a right and wrong and God is judge is not considered, if it's not doesn't start with a submission to God, it just becomes about what sells, and lust sells. And this is in all genres, but it is used especially in fantasy worlds because they use the fantasy world to excuse sin. There's this bizarre law that you have to obey to do this and this sin. But remember, a fantasy world must accurately reflect the real world, not just give you an excuse to do what you want. And it may sell for them, but it's not good art because it doesn't actually portray reality, as well as being an inversion of truth. The second one you see is reverse harem. It is super huge, and that is literally what it is. And that makes sense because women have been told they're the goddess, the queen, so why not have a reverse harem? And then the other one is mated, like with the demon or the fae or the vampire or the wolf. Each of these are very different, but it goes with this idea that if the woman is better than the man, she should have something better than a man. And it comes out of this heart of pride, which is interesting. So the other thing that has had a huge influx that the authors have been talking about is more books about witches and spirits. And authors talk about how they can put so much more witchcraft than they ever could a decade or two ago, and it's now accepted. Now, I do want to say that I'm encouraged because the Christian books are also ready to dive more into the spiritual as well. Now, if we were to travel back in time 20 years, we would all be very familiar with the art of the 1990s. What Christian artist would be hanging in like 80% of the Christian homes of the 1990s? Thomas Kinkade. Thomas Kinkade said that he was painting the earth without the fall. Now, remember that our beliefs show in our art, and as fun as it sounds like to have the earth without the fall, it also means that his art did not deal with sin. And while there were exceptions, like Francine Rivers, when you read a lot of the novels from the 80s and 90s, they didn't like to deal with sin. They were very Hallmark. And I would say that that has changed in the Christian genre. The characters actually do face sin. There is more spiritual warfare and an actual look at what sin looks like, how to escape it, and the power of God's redemption over it. So there is more depth in the books that are coming out now in the Christian genres for the most part than 20 years ago.